These are the 20 best PCVR games that you need to play on your Meta Quest 3. So let's dive right into it. And starting it off, we have Arcane Age. Now this is a huge VR action adventure in which you will be fighting your way through its fantasy world with an arsenal of crazy looking weapons and swords. And the cool thing is that your loadout is completely customizable to the smallest details. And besides that, it also packs some awesome physics-based features into it that can go from realistic combat mechanics to climbing and crafting. However, it is mainly the exploration of its world and the insane boss fights that they have built in that makes this one of the most memorable PC VR games that are out there. And that gets us to number 2, which is Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now while this one probably doesn't need an introduction, in Microsoft Flight Simulator, you can board your own private jet or helicopter to then fly them anywhere you want in this highly detailed replication of the world, but all inside virtual reality. Although, that doesn't even scratch the surface of how much comes packed into this experience from the start. Because next to the many different planes that you can choose from, it also has airports, a live weather system, and an actual beautiful world that keeps changing all the time. And thanks to that, it can sometimes feel so realistic that it doesn't even feel like you're playing a game anymore. But moving on, we have number 3, known as Stormland. And this is a game where you will be playing as a robot yourself in a dystopian world, and where your main goal is to defeat the incoming robotic invaders. Now while the settings and gameplay itself are already pretty damn cool, it is mainly the unique things that you can do in here, like flying high above the clouds to get to your next destination, that make it really stand out. Now luckily, the combat, story, and world building are also pretty high level, and it is great that you can choose to play it either solo or in co-op mode with friends. But do keep in mind though, that you won't find this one on the normal Steam VR store website. And instead, you will have to find it on the Link PCVR page of Meta, since this is still an official Oculus exclusive. But if you maybe want a bit more of a relaxing experience, then you should probably check out number 4, which is Kayak VR Mirage. Because this one is probably one of the most stunning and realistic graphics that you can get on your VR headset. And that, well, the game itself is pretty simple, since all you're doing is kayaking throughout its different locations. But you can make it as intense as you want, since on one side, you will also have the option for multiplayer, so that you can race against each other and see who reaches the finish line first. Either way, the details that go from its wildlife to the immersive music all add up to a fantastic escape game for real life. And number 5 is Boneworks. And this is the popular VR hit from the developers known as Stress Level Zero. And they are also mostly known for making highly creative games that play with realistic physics of objects and combat. Although, there is also a cool story to go through that will explore lots of mysteries and puzzles for you to solve. But once you're finished with the campaign, then you can also try out one of its many different mods that can sometimes be just as good as the original game, making this a must try for anyone who hasn't played it yet. But if you want something a bit more scary, then we also have number 6, known as Phasmophobia, because this is a 4-player psychological horror game that truly comes to life in VR. And in it, you and your team will be visiting some haunted locations with the goal of gathering evidence of any paranormal activity that is happening there. And adding to the creepy setting is that the graphics also look way too realistic. But maybe the best attention to detail is that next to your ghost hunting equipment, the game even has things like voice recognition built into it, so that you can talk with the ghost using a Ouija board and much more. And a good thing to know is that while the original was a flat screen game, the VR version feels even better and a lot more scary. Oh yeah, and a nice thing is that you can play together with both PC and VR users at the same time. But next up, we have a real hidden gem, which is known as Cosmic Star Lounge. Now here, you will find yourself in the so-called Cosmic Hub, where you can choose between multiple arcade-inspired worlds to dive into together with your friends. And that means that this game is kind of like a collection of multiple VR experiences all packaged into a single title. And these can go from 1v1 magic duels to a tower defense version, or even a full game of golf. But honestly, playing these competitive games with your friends is where the most fun is at. And in one way, it kind of feels like an upgrade of something like Mario Party, but then specifically made for virtual reality. But by far best of all is that the developers behind it are also really motivated to create even more cool experiences within here. So that means that you can expect a lot of other interesting game modes and settings to be added to this already quite big roster. And of course, I will also make sure to leave a link to these in the description below, together with a nice discount, so make sure you don't miss out on that. And number 8 is Lone Echo, which is a single player title that takes place in an advanced mining facility around the rings of Saturn. And as the player, you will take on the role of Jack, who is an advanced robot with a state-of-the-art synthetic body. And this one is also a meta PCVR exclusive, so keep that in mind when you're looking on Steam. And if you've already played it and can't get enough, then it also has a great sequel for you to try out. And on number 9, we have Skyrim VR, which is the phenomenal open-world Elder Scrolls V, fully ported to work directly on your headset. But while it does have all the things that you come to expect from this epic fantasy masterpiece, you probably do want to install a couple of mods before you play it. And that is mainly because the basic graphics and interactions aren't always the best. But once you do have all these mods installed, then this can become a whole new way to relive this classic. And on number 10, we have No Man's Sky. Now this game probably has the biggest redemption arc in history after its more than rough initial launch. But luckily, with all the hundreds of different updates, DLC, and changes that the developers have made, they did end up making an absolute gem that is fully playable in virtual reality. And during your time with it, you'll be heading into your spaceship to discover new planets, life forms, and craft nearly anything that you can think of. And honestly, it is not even possible to mention all the things that you can find and do in here. So if you somehow didn't check this one out yet, then now is the perfect time to do so. But before we go to the next 10 must-have PCVR games that you don't want to miss, let's first have a quick word from the company that made this video possible. Because none other than Cat VR, who are known to create VR treadmills that look like they come straight out of Ready Player One, are taking VR once again to the next level. Because while we normally are limited by the space and boundary system inside our virtual reality experiences, it is Cat VR that has been creating VR treadmills that let you run, crouch, and jump without any limitation. And since their most recent version, that is known as the C2 Core, is compatible with nearly every headset, it is often also considered as the dream upgrade for any VR setup. And they even go so far that for those hardcore fans, they also have high-end models that include things like haptic feedback or a vehicle hub, making it feel even more realistic, like riding on a horse inside VR. And as a cherry on top, you can also use the code VRelity for a $130 discount on your entire purchase. So for those who are interested, I'll leave a link in the description below. Which gets us to number 11, Assetto Corsa. And this is also known as the racing simulator for VR. Now firstly, they have multiple titles that support virtual reality, with the most recent one still being in early access. But in them, you can expect some highly accurate tracks and cars that you can choose from and that you can drive to your heart's content. But you can also expect things like a career mode or multiplayer features like you have with your standard racing sims. Either way, no matter which one you choose from that trilogy, you can be sure that it will scratch that itch if you love some adrenaline-pumping race cars. And number 12 is Subnautica, which is probably also one of the more unique titles on this list, since all the action in it takes place underwater. So simply put, in its story mode, you are dropped into the ocean of an alien planet where your first main goal is to survive. Now once you've managed this, you can start to explore the massive open world, while you also try to unravel the mystery of what exactly happened here. And while you do all this, you'll have to be very careful for the other predators out there, while also keeping an eye on your oxygen level. But if you want even more mystery, then check out number 13, known as Escape Simulator. Because this is a first-person puzzle game that is perfect for those people who love a real-life escape room. And just like the real thing, you can play this in either solo or in co-op. Now if you aren't familiar with these though, you will basically have to solve riddles and crack codes to be able to move to the next location. And while from the start there are already quite a lot of awesome experiences built into it, you could even get some community created ones if you just can't get enough. Or maybe take it even further and create your very own with their room editor. But that gets us to number 14, known as VTOL VR. And while at first sight, you might be surprised that the graphics don't look like anything to write home about, especially when compared to the alternative Microsoft Flight Simulator, it still is a fantastic title that you have to play, because VTOL has its main focus much more on the combat instead. So besides just pressing some buttons in your aircraft and going from point A to B, you will also be brawling it out in air battles, in either missions or online PvP. But if you're looking for more of a classic, then we have number 15, which is Robo Recall. Now just imagine having the power of grabbing bullets like you're in the Matrix, but then while you're fighting robots that have gone rogue in a futuristic city. Well, that is exactly what Robo Recall is. But what I like about it most is that during your gameplay, you will receive extra points if you take out your opponents in more creative ways. So try your best to just whip out some of those John Wick style knockouts whenever you can. And if you want something more chill after all that action, then you can check out number 16, which is Tabletop Simulator. Since this one is quite unlike anything else on this list, because instead of being your standard VR game, it is basically a place where you can play a bunch of popular board games in virtual reality with your friends. And no, I'm not just talking about the built-in ones that come with it, but also the many other board games that you know and love from big developers that can be ported over to this experience. So in that way, you can play them with your friends at any time, even if they are on the other side of the world. However, if you for some reason want to add even more horror titles to your game list, then we have number 17, which is The Forest. And in this one, you will be a lone survivor of a crash who's trying to find their way to safety in a creepy forest, where you will also be battling for your survival again and again. And while it does give a bit of Green Hell vibes, since you will have to do things like building shelter and chop down trees, it is a lot more scary than you think at first. So if you always wanted to see how long you would survive in a situation like this, then you know where to find it. And number 18 is Hitman World of Assassination. And this is a port of the original Hitman trilogy, all packaged into one and playable in VR. But don't confuse it though with the insanely rough game for the Quest, which is known as Hitman 3 VR Reloaded. Because unlike that one, Hitman World of Assassination is probably all you could want from a proper virtual reality port. So this will actually finally let you embody the famous Bolt agent in first person. And at number 19, we have Elite Dangerous. And this one is a massive multiplayer in an open world that is also filled with an evolving narrative that lets you fly across the Milky Way. However, keep in mind that this game isn't easy and it will require some getting used to before you understand how everything works and what you have to do. But once it does click, it can really become an intergalactic adventure unlike anything else. But of course, the most important PCVR game is number 20, known as Half-Life Alyx, because no PCVR game list would be complete without at least mentioning the absolute massive impact that Half-Life Alyx had on the PCVR gaming landscape. Since not only is this by far one of the best VR games of all time, it is also part of the Half-Life franchise and made by Valve themselves. And everything from its gameplay to its interactions and combat mechanics can also be seen back in other popular VR experiences today. So if you somehow haven't played this yet, then please do yourself a favor and check it out. But that's not all, because besides all these awesome PC VR games, there are also a lot of other free Quest 3 games that you need to try. So click on the video that you see on screen right now to make sure you don't miss out on them. And of course, stay awesome.